Welcome back to Getting a Grip on the Michigan Business Network. I'm Mike Maddox, your host. I am with Aaron Boatin. Aaron is my guest. He is the president of Ames Call Center. He's been at Ames for 29 years. So you must have started when you were like 5.
Let's go with that, Mike.
Let's go with
Absolutely.
that. Yeah. And actually, you probably did, but you're not counting that in the 29 years. So
That's right.
29
Yeah.
years running the business with a family business, long history of doing great things for clients and adapting over time. And Aaron, you've talked about that throughout the podcast already about, technology was going to put you guys out of business and your whole industry out of business with call forwarding and, voicemail and all this stuff. And you keep adapting and you keep providing value and finding new ways. And we talked about the power of that in previous segments. I want to get into something else because it's an overlooked area of running an EOS type company. And it's one that is sorely needed by businesses of all sizes and often gets neglected, and that is good process. So, how has that worked at Ames, and how do you define good process?
Sure. I think, when we first started on EOS, defining our core process was, it was amazing that like, okay, that's why, we define the whole core process for all the different departments in the company. And
Yeah, so
by
your
just,
sales and marketing
sales,
process,
marketing,
financial
operations,
process.
yeah,
Yeah,
all those things. And, first of all, starting with your, first of all, core process, that's a living document. That is always going to evolve. We look at that every year in our annual planning, but starting at 1.0 version, that was amazing for those in, I think it really breaks down silos across departments because it's like, oh, well, that's why sales is doing this, and this is why
right.
operations needs that. And it really ties everything together as a team to understand, okay, this is like how our engines, put together. This is what makes the car run, so to speak. So, in the core process, I mean, it took us a while, like, okay, the first thing you default to is let's create a step by step. Okay, do this, click here, open that, do that. It's back up 10,000 feet. Let's document the 80% of what we're doing. It's not an instruction document. It's a, overarching process of
Yeah.
what we do to get the results we need in each area of our business. So, um,
Yeah,
by defining
it's
that, yeah,
on
it's
that
been
point,
great.
Aaron, on that point, when I talk about core process with clients, what they usually envision is a 200-page SOP that nobody ever reads. And I'm guilty in my past of creating those, and we file them and nobody ever looks at them, understands them. Core process to an EOS company is what I coach is it's the 20% of the things that get you 80% of the results. It's the big
Yes,
items.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I
and
guess I
that's what
had
you're
that
talking about.
flipped. I guess I had that flipped. Yeah. It is a 20% that does the 80. Exactly. And yeah, I think really, and I think it's important for everybody to know this is a living document. This is how you get better. You refine these processes and you can start to really by having it defined, then you can start connecting the dots when you run into headwinds or like a challenge. Like, okay, we see some inefficiencies here and this is why and this is where we need to tweak the process or let's IDS this issue and how does that tie back to our process and do we need to refine that. So
Right.
it's we as a core as part of our annual we always look at the core process, but if there's something in the whenever we can say a timeout, we'll go through and dig into the process and evaluate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if
everything's fair game, right? I mean, that's part of the transparency that gets created
Mhm.
is just because you have a core process document written for, let's say, your sales process. If if it's not working and the root of it is, well, in our process, we say this and that doesn't work, well, then you can IDS, identify, discuss, and solve that and change the core process. The other thing that's interesting about core process, and I'm interested in your take on this, is
Sure.
um, I've always said that if you have a core process, anybody that touches any part of that process, even a small part, has to be trained on the entire core process. And the reason I believe that is it gives, you started to talk about this, it gives others a complete understanding of why we do it this way. Because often people in one department don't understand why sales does things the way they do, or sales doesn't understand why customer support does things the way they do. Once they are trained on the whole thing, they're like, oh, okay, I get that now.
Right. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I mean, foundationally, like everybody in our organization is trained on taking calls. So foundationally, let's start there. And then, we go through the core process of every department with one another. And I could not agree with you more. It's like not having these core process. I mean, we were a ship without a rudder. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, is a good way to put it. I mean, yeah, we're going to float. We're going to get across the lake. Eventually, the wind's going to get us there. But let's get there faster to reach our goals with these processes as a rudder. So it's
Yeah.
been, yeah,
And without that, you get divisions and you get people making assumptions. And I have a good friend, actually, somebody as well, who's worked with me for many years, who says we judge others based on their actions. We judge ourselves based on our intentions, right? So we can always look at what other divisions are doing and find faults. But when we look at ourselves, we're always looking at, well, my intentions were good, right? There's a human tendency to do that. But when they understand the context of what others are working in and why they're doing things the way they're doing it, it creates a little more empathy, and it ends that kind of guessing and backbiting and interdivisional fighting that just sucks energy out of the company.
absolutely. It definitely is a stress reducer. And, I think anybody joining the organization, it brings everybody up to speed much faster and allows people
Absolutely.
to connect the dots and understand the organization much quicker than they would by just being, osmosis, right?
Without that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be right back after this. That's a great point, and we're gonna follow up on that when we get back from the break. We've got commercials to get to, and we're coming back on getting a grip on the Michigan Business Center.